Once you've seen it in performance, it's hard to forget those bright yellow cross-gartered stockings worn by Malvolio in Twelfth Night. But that's not the only place Shakespeare uses the term garter or gartered. His plays feature ungartered, Caddis gartered, even cruel gartered among his 34 uses of the word garter. But what is a garter anyway? Let's explore. Malvolio's cross-gartered stockings are their own beast in Shakespeare's plays, as they are intended to be. Yellow being a lively color in an era when the dark, demure blacks and browns and other muted colors were much more fashionable. One article I read suggested that yellow stockings would have been particularly faux pas under the Elizabethan court and actually become much more popular by the time King James took the throne in England. So the fashion seems to shift, but at the time, Malvolio was wearing yellow cross-gartered stockings. Yellow was like faux pas. You really shouldn't be dressing in that bright of a color. We'll leave the exploration to the history of color in fashion for another episode. Today, here's what you need to know about garters. In the 16th century, they had not figured out yet elastics for keeping items like socks or pants from falling down one's body while you're wearing them. In order to prevent their stockings from falling down, men would often employ garters, which are simply strips of fabric tied around your legs to hold up your pants, called stockings. You can think about 16th century stockings like the yoga pants, but worn under poofy shorts by fashionable men. One style of support for the garters was called cross-gartering. This was a specific style, a fashion trend, if you will, like gaucho pants maybe, but for the 16th century. All it meant was that you took the garters, the strips of fabric, and you wrapped them around your legs and crisscrossed them behind the knee. Garters, being highly visible, were often places you could show off your wealth and affluence. So garters were often made from costly materials and featured highly decorative items like fringe or embellishment. So what about those other kinds of garters that Shakespeare talks about? Caddis garter is a phrase that gets used by Henry V in the play Henry IV, Part 1. It's a little bit confusing since Shakespeare also has a play called Henry V, but Henry IV, Part 1, it comes in a long list of insults and included caddis garter. This was another type of garter that you could have, but unlike the cross-gartered stockings, which was considered high class, a caddis gartered was someone who used wool, a particularly low quality piece of fabric, to use as their garters to hold their pants up. So he's insulting them with that phrase. You can only afford this ridiculous kind, was kind of the implication there. Cross-gartered, as we've mentioned, was considered somewhat pretentious. You're trying a little too hard to look nice. Another phrase Shakespeare uses called cruel gartered, which shows up in King Lear, the Fool talks about that, is also alluding to those strips of fabric, of using them for a mean purpose. So the Fool is talking about you've got this fabric available to you because it's on your clothing. If you were to take them off and do something bad with them, you're being cruel. So that phrase gets used as well. One of the most prolific uses of the word garter that Shakespeare employs is the host of the garter and knight of the garter. Now, for us today in the 21st century, we think of garters as this lacy strap on your leg that gets used in weddings or that women wear as part of their lingerie ensemble. So it's really, really funny to think of there being a knight of the garter. It's like a knight holding a garter, and you kind of make this face like, why is that? So let me set the record straight for what that is. The Knights of the Garter is an exclusive club of members appointed by the monarch in England that represent key attributes of chivalry. It goes back hundreds of years. Think of these people as the Olympians of national contribution for public service or personal service to the sovereign. They are extremely honored positions to hold. Membership is limited to the monarch, the Prince of Wales, and 24 other living members, each of which is appointed by the crown. In England today, Prince William is a Knight of the Garter, for example. Why are they called Knights of the Garter? Well, apparently that's because their members wear garters. That's right, the same strips of fabric that we see show up in Malvolio's outfit for Twelfth Night, with strips of fabric tied around their legs. This outfit is still worn by the Knights of the Garters at public ceremonies or official ceremonies. It's kind of like their uniform. And this harkens back to the time of Shakespeare, when this fashion statement was reserved for the best of the best. The highest of society would wear their clothes this way. So it comes from a time when the garter was used for the elite. That's it for this week. I'm Cassidy Cash. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new about the bard. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.